Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue with our NteQ model. One of the things that I had to do when I was working on a project for my doctorate was to create a job aid. Basically, it's a one piece of paper or one page that explains the NteQ Integrating Technology for Inquiry model. So if you think about it, the NteQ model, it should be an easy 10-step plan to achieve computer integration lessons. So 5 key components. It needs to be student-centered. Teacher needs to be the facilitator or the librarian. The computer needs to be a tool that's used. The lesson needs to be authentic, and you need to utilize standards. So those are, if you can remember those 5 components, you're off to a great start. So the first step is to specify your objectives. Your lesson design should include everything being taught by the unit, not just the computer part. The next bulleted information, objectives may be written in one of 2 different formats. Behavioral expectations, that's where it's easy to identify student outcomes in a single sentence, or you can use cognitive expectations. That's where you're using, you're explaining the learning goals, but you require more than one sentence. Most of us probably use behavioral. Objectives should be based on existing curriculum and technology standards, should be appropriate for the grade and subject being taught. Second step are your computer functions, the tasks the computers will perform to help students complete the objectives. That's what you're looking for. So you need to consider what types of computer functions the students will use that will best match the learning objectives. For example, will you use a spreadsheet? Will they create a chart? Are they using some type of Word document? Are they utilizing the internet to locate information? Or are they doing more than one of those? Or will they use a combination of those, more than one of the computer functions? You'll list all specific computer functions the students will use to achieve successful completion for the lesson. The third step is to specify the problem, something the students that will need to solve or investigate for the instructional process. It will use real-world data that interests and boosts cognition development for the students. Problems should be highly motivating and interesting to the students, and the teachers should determine a real-world problem to make the lesson more concrete. So step 4, research and analysis. Determine what data the students will need to gather, or if it will be provided by the teacher, and how they will gather the data if necessary. So basically, you're going to figure out what works best for this lesson objective or objectives and the task created. If the lab is an experiment, then data will need to be gathered to make it more authentic. If it's a research-oriented task, then data will be found from other sources by the student, including the internet and hopefully print resources. Or if instructional time is limited or the data gathering is irrelevant to the overall goal of the lesson, then data could be provided for the students by the teacher. Just depends on the objectives. Step 5, your results presentation. Determine what format the students will provide the results they find, what type of product will be created. Careful planning must take place to ensure fairness for all students involved. Do they have access to appropriate technology if required for the presentation? Are they capable of creating a poster, etc.? Think about your students and what they can do and what they have access to. Step 6, activities during the computer use. 2 things to consider. Will they be working individually or will they be working in groups? And what specific activities will the students engage in while working on the computer to solve the problem specified in Step 3? Step 7, activities before the computer use. Determine what activities need to be completed before computer use to ensure the most efficient and productive use of the computer, especially when there's limited access to the computers or iPads or whatever it is you're using. A checklist would be a great starter for some units, or at least a brainstorm list of topics that the students will research for the activity. Step 8, activities after the computer use. Taking the information that's been generated from using the computer to use it in another way to end the lesson. That is, have students take the results and analyze them by creating a graph or a chart, writing a report with the information garnered, or just interpreting and explaining the results. That can be a simple way to show what the students learned. Step 9 are your supporting activities. This is a great spot for cross-curricular activities that might be tied to the lesson. For example, if the students calculated distances from Google Earth for map, they might then read a book on the culture of the area they just studied or discuss the climate and science of the same area. Your assessment. This is going to determine what the student has learned. It may be done formally through a test or a quiz. It could be done informally, where the students retell what they learned. It could be a rubric or a checklist to see that all tasks were completed. It may be the quality of the presentation if the students presented their information. The assessment will help with planning other lessons based on your student performance. And my reference is there, but I will admit it is not APA format. I believe that is MLA format, but I did use the Morrison and Lowther text that the PDF was based on. So several years ago, Dr. McAllister and I presented the NteQ model, I believe at AIM, after we had presented it to our teachers in our district. We were both working in Greenbrier, I believe, at the time. Okay, so teaching in the 21st century. The beauty of using the NteQ model is you can incorporate several standards, including the state frameworks, Common Core, which we used to use, but now we're using the Arkansas state frameworks again. Before that, like if you were using the NteQ model in an art class, they did not use the Common Core frameworks. But now all of the subject areas have their own state frameworks. Library media frameworks, the Arkansas ones. You can also use the AASL standards and the NET standards from ISTE. So we shared a quick YouTube video on teaching in the 21st century. So think about it. Creating is where we want students to get on Bloom's taxonomy. That's where we want the best learning and the most learning to occur. So by using the NteQ model and having students not just use technology to be using technology, but to actually use it as a tool to do something. That's where you're trying to go with this lesson. And this video really is great, so I'll share it within our course resources in our folder. We only watched the first 3 minutes, but it's about 9 minutes and 48 seconds total. So when it comes to technology in the classroom, there's a couple of different things that take place. You can have technology infusion, an infused classroom that has pieces of technology. You can have technology integration. You have the technology, you have a certain amount of teaching that goes with the technology, or you can have technology immersion, authentic use of the technology. It's student-centered, using authentic engagement, and that's where we're going with the NteQ model. So the NteQ model integrates technology into the classroom, using skills for the 21st century. It moves from the teacher-centered to the student-centered classroom. It views computers as the tool rather than the teacher. The teacher is the designer or facilitator for instruction, but it's still a student-centered classroom. So first step we know is to specify the objectives. Specify all your lesson objectives, not just the ones using the computer, but everything you are trying to accomplish. It includes both the computer-related and the non-computer related objectives. So our second step is the NteQ. In the NteQ model are the computer functions. Match your objectives to your computer functions. Computer functions should support your objectives. So for example, if you had your objective was to analyze, you could have the computer function use a spreadsheet to determine, use a database to find create a chart to show. So you can see, for example, there's a chart there. Your objective is write or edit. So this time instead, your computer function could be to use a word processor to create. Edit your partner's paper. Use a spell checker too. If your objective is to design or plan, create a drawing showing. Design a safe playground. Make a map of your neighborhood. Those could be some examples of your computer functions. So the third step is to specify your problem. Needs to be realistic, needs to have real-world events, it needs to be from the student's world. Let them suggest the problem. Fourth step, data manipulation. How will the students manipulate the data? Will they have job aids or think sheets with questions and ideas for the student? Fifth step are the results presentation. How will students present the results? Will it be printed? Will it be an oral report? Will they create a magazine or a newsletter? Will they create a TV broadcast? Will they create a web page? Will they have it during school conferences? Sixth step is at the computer. What will the students do at the computer? Will they enter data? Will they manipulate data? Will they create a report? Now the next step is prior to the computer. So before they get over there to conduct those activities, what will the students do before? Will they create some keywords for searching? Will they collect their data? Will they brainstorm different things that they need to do so that when they get to the computer, they're ready to go? So the eighth step is after using the computer. What will students do after using the computer? This purpose is to use the information generated from the computer. So the next step are the supporting activities. What additional activities can you use to support the objectives? And you can do these actually anytime during the lesson. They need to be meaningful, not just busy work. They need to be related to the reading, problem solving, discussion. It could be manipulatives. It needs to be something that supports that end all those overall objectives that you're trying to get to. And the final step is the assessment piece. This may require more than just a test. It could be the computer-generated project, it could be a printed report, it could be a slideshow the students created or a multimedia report, it could be an electronic portfolio. Definitely, it's usually best to have some type of reflective piece and also use a rubric to assess overall how the project or product ended up. So there are your 10 steps in the NteQ model. So within our assignment area, you can see the actual assignment with the rubric. The NteQ detailed PowerPoint, that is an example that Dr. Tracy McAllister put together for an example of something she had done. You are welcome to open that and access it. We've included, or I've included, the ASL, the learning standards, if you want to refer to those to see what you could pair with the NETS standards and the state standards you're going to use. There is a spreadsheet lesson and a student sample that isn't completely perfect. The PowerPoint that I just went over is this NteQ model. If you want to go to it, it does have a link to that video on 21st Century Learners. I believe it's on the first slide. You might want to access that. It's probably one of the best videos I've seen. And then there's also the PDF that I went over in the first assignment to information screencast. But